The main aim of this video is to highlight evidence and critically analyse the social impacts and legacies associated with hosting sport in mega events. More specifically, the objectives of this presentation are to critique factors which determine the outcome of sporting mega events, to show an understanding of the associated impacts on local, national and global communities, and to evaluate key legacies associated with hosting mega events. However, in order to achieve our objectives, it is crucial that we define what mega events are. Jago and Shaw define mega events as one-time events which are on an international scale. However, this definition could be criticised because by stating that mega events must occur on a one-time basis, we exclude globally recognisable recurring sporting events such as the Olympic Games, Super Bowl and FIFA World Cup. Therefore, broader definitions should be considered. Many theorists state that the difference between major and mega events is purely size. In fact, Bowden argues that an event can't be mega unless it affects whole economies. Maris gives a measurable definition by arguing that mega events must attract 1 million visitors. However, yet again, these definitions can be criticised because an event's mediated reach online should be included. Therefore, Muller's definition can be considered reliable. Muller states that the mega events must be specifically large within 4 key dimensions: visitor attractiveness, mediated reach, cost, and transformative impact. Now that we have defined mega events, application can be used to enable us to categorise major versus mega events. Here are a few examples of events and where they could arguably be placed. So, how can socio-cultural factors determine the outcome of mega events? Roche argues that mega events can be perceived as products of their time due to the reflections and refractions of wider society within them. He argues that these socio-cultural factors fall into 5 categories: techno-economic, changes caused by industrialisation, science and technology; political economic, societal changes caused by globalisation; cultural economic, changes created by mass culture and demassification; political cultural, societal changes in ideologies, identities and acceptances; and civilizational worldview, referring to the relationship seen between humanity and nature during mega event hosting. To analyse this, we will explore a few examples. Firstly, Crotch highlights how techno-economic advances within the media, otherwise known as mediatisation, has resulted in changes within culture, society and everyday life, thus affecting the outcome of mega events. For example, the London 2012 Paralympic success in both viewing figures and disabled sport are credited to their wraparound media coverage. In contrast, the media also created the negative legacies at the 2016 Rio Olympics due to trending leaked photographs of the diving pool turning green and the Games' abandoned facilities after the event. In addition, the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics was negatively impacted as a result of political cultural factors within Russia. In 2013, Russia passed a law which banned the promotion of non-traditional sexualities. In addition, the mayor of Sochi stated that gay people visiting Sochi for the Winter Olympics should keep their sexuality to themselves. This caused backlash, resulting in the Winter Olympics being affected by protests, public figures and sponsors speaking negatively, and world leaders notably choosing not to attend the Games. Therefore, despite the organising committee actively trying to achieve a positive legacy for diversity at the Sochi Winter Olympics, the Games instead became a platform for the world's public disapproval of Russia's attitude to the LGBTQ+ community. Chaplin states that mega events are increasingly being utilised due to the positive social, environmental and economic impacts they can bring. However, we must first define the difference between an impact and a legacy, because the two concepts are often interchanged incorrectly. Many theorists argue that time is the main decipher between the two. Impacts are short-term changes, whereas legacies are pre-planned strategies aimed to create long-term changes. Event impacts can also be utilised and examined as indicators to explore if legacies have been achieved. Ello states that this process is called leveraging, but we will discuss this later on in the video. Hickston says, with the increasing number of events being held worldwide, it is important to consider the social impact of events. But what are social impacts? Mason defines social impacts as those which affect people and communities. Small identified 6 categories which social impacts can be sorted into. These are inconveniences, community identities and cohesions, personal frustrations, entertainment and socialisation opportunities, community growth and developments, and behaviour consequences. We can now add examples, starting with those specifically outlined by Small. We can then add other impacts identified by additional theorists. Impacts which affect locals are orange, those which affect locally and nationally are blue, and those which affect locally, nationally and globally are white. This is because some impacts affect more than one scale. For example, enhanced community pride may be felt by host communities as well as communities all over the world as a result of their country's success at the Olympics. Initially, we can deem these impacts to be reliable because many theorists have identified similar social impacts. In addition, by inserting real-life examples, we can consider the impacts as real and not concepts. I will highlight these red. For example, Hines reported in the Irish Times that he loathed the British Grand Prix due to high levels of traffic and difficulties parking. The Guardian reported how in order to build the 2012 Olympic site, 450 people were displaced. Lastly, FIFA outlines how elderly citizens, students, and those who receive federal income assistance in Brazil were able to gain access to entertainment and social interactions via discounted tickets. Overall, the majority of these impacts are obviously either positive, now green, or negative, now red. However, real-life examples can be used to analyse this. For example, Duran highlights how the 1992 Barcelona Olympic Games led to Barcelona becoming a major tourist destination. However, after the initial post-game euphoria, Barcelona residents began to perceive tourists as threats and oppose them. This shows how, despite originally seeming positive, the following impacts turning red could also arguably be negative. In addition, Bladen argues that each mega event is different due to the differing social and cultural context they are hosted in, thus making impacts complex to measure, especially due to their subjective factors. For example, it is hard to measure how communities feel pride. In addition, some initially identified impacts may not be as positive as originally reported. For example, although the 1992 Barcelona Olympics generated opportunities for employment, it was found that majority were temporary positions. This suggests that identified impacts may not always be reliable or seen after every mega event. Now we can move on to social legacies. Earlier on, we defined legacies as long-term impacts felt after mega events. Prius argues that event legacies can be categorised within the following 6 categories. So, let's explore an example of each. A planned legacy was seen after the Barcelona 1992 Olympic Games. Event managers planned for the Olympic Games to provide an opportunity for urban development, allowing Barcelona to transform into a long-term tourist destination. Contrastingly, the Sochi 2014 Winter Olympics left an unplanned legacy because Russia implemented laws which infringed upon gay rights, thus causing backlash and leaving Russia and the Games negatively viewed. A positive legacy can be drawn from the increased environmental sustainability seen after the 2000 Sydney Olympic Games. The Games were given the global Roll of Honour after being classed as the first Green Games. Albeit an environmental impact, the continued investment into sustainability suggests that social attitudes were also positively changed. A negative impact, however, can be seen from the 2016 Brazil Olympics. The Games facilities were left deserted after the completion of the Olympics and are not being used by anyone within the local or national community, thus leaving a negative social legacy behind. A tangible impact has been left after the 2012 London Olympics. The Olympic Park was developed with social sustainability in mind, meaning all 8 permanent venues at the park are open, used regularly and operational, thus leaving a positive tangible legacy for the community. Lastly, an intangible legacy was developed at the 2010 FIFA Football World Cup in South Africa. After the event's completion, the 2010 FIFA World Cup Legacy Trust was formed and allocated $65 million to ensure the development of football throughout South Africa and support social development projects through football. But how are event legacies managed? Firstly, Priya states that legacy management should be conducted throughout event planning in order to be successful. Charlotte recommends that managers should leverage Liminoy's celebratory feelings associated with mega events as a catalyst for social change. Shortly and Essex state that recently, leveraging has been used to accelerate urban regeneration. We know this is reliable because leveraging was utilised as a tool for urban regeneration within the Barcelona 1992, Sydney 2000 and London 2012 Olympic Games we looked at earlier. However, Chaplet argues that legacies can be vast and often unclear, thus suggesting that mega event managers may face challenges. For example, the measurement of legacies is complex due to intangible elements. Differing opinions may also present challenges. Some legacies are hard to isolate as a direct result of mega events. And lastly, despite reliable legacies being concluded, managers are unable to utilise previous mega event legacies as benchmarks because each event will develop differently. To conclude, within this presentation we have defined and categorised mega sporting events, outlined and assessed social cultural factors which can influence on an event's success, identified and assessed associated impacts, and assessed their legacies and subsequent legacy management used within mega events. Thank you.